We're all familiar with the three whats: what it is, what it can do for me, and what does it cost. Tyler Rickenaugh, Country Financial, can help you find the answers with insurance coverage to help protect what's most important to you, all at a price you can afford. So while you're juggling work and kids while trying to keep an eye on your financial future, Tyler Rickenaugh, Country Financial, will make sure they are the first ones there when you need them most.
The kids are back to school, and your schedule is busier than ever. From daycare pickup, doctor's appointments, sports, and college tuition, a parent's signature is a powerful thing. Have you ever stopped to think, what would happen if you weren't able to provide one? With thoughtful estate planning, you can make sure that your child's health and education needs are met in the event of your absence due to a temporary incapacity or even death. The estate planning team at Hoerr Burish is here to help.
Fostering deeper relationships, influencing behavior change, developing resilience. You're about to start winning. Here is your host, Christine Bright.
Welcome to Parenting Game. I am so glad you are here. Dinner time can be messy, especially if you have a toddler. It is literally messy. But dinner time can also be emotionally messy, especially if you have a picky eater. My guest today is Hoerr, who is a nutritionist and dietitian, and she's going to be sharing with us some great tips on how we can make dinner time a little more happy. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, we were talking earlier and realized it's been like 4 years since our initial connection.
Yes.
And talking about how I could, help you connect you with parents. And now we have the show, so we're going to be making a big connection. So I'm excited. I am really excited about this episode because I get asked all the time on how to deal with picky eating, and mealtime can get really emotionally messy.
Yes.
And I don't like it because it's a great time just to bond as a family.
Definitely.
So before we dig in, just share with us a little bit about your family, and then how did you decide that you not only wanted to be a dietitian, but specialize in kids and families?
Yeah. Well, I love talking about my family. I moved to Madison actually about 9 years ago. Got married, have a husband, and I now have a daughter who's a year. So just turning 1 actually.
Oh, congrats.
So anyway, that's my family, and we love spending time together. And how I got started with specifically being a dietitian that focuses on picky eating, just what you said, it's emotionally hard. And I got lots of parents coming to me of like, just in distress, and it was so hard for me to see that, and also knowing like there's some solutions that I can help with, and I really wanted to help parents with that. And so that's kind of how I changed gears and was like, I'm just going to focus on this and with the whole family aspect of helping kids, but then also the parents too, and how they parent and how they feel about their bodies. So it kind of is an all-encompassing path that I took of working with the entire family. I just hated to see them in distress and all this frustration at the dinner table, knowing it didn't always have to be like that.
Yeah, and it's so great because, as we know, those habits that we develop when we're young, those different ideas about food and how food should be handled, when they're given to us at a young age, the older you get, it becomes really difficult to break some of those eating patterns that may have been unhealthy.
Yeah.
So I get excited about teaching parents and helping parents really implement healthy table time at an early age.
Yes.
And again, to not make it, such an emotional part of the day, that this can be a happy day and understanding day. And I'm just so excited about the information that you're going to share. So let's dig in.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of things that we do as parents and I always preface it out of the goodness of our heart, right? We think we're doing something good for our kids. And I know for me, and the one reason I wanted to touch on this is because this was a habit that has been really a challenge for me to break as an adult, is the clean plate club. So share with me why we don't need to be doing that as parents, and what can happen if we do force this issue of the clean plate club.
Yeah, I love that. So I think it's important to remember that as kids, they're inherently born intuitive eaters. And when I say that, I mean they eat when they're hungry and they stop when they're satisfied. And that's also the adults that I work with, they are learning to become intuitive eaters again. But as kids, they already know that, and they're able to regulate how much they need to be eating. And when we are, as parents, in our best intentions, right, we're like trying to help them. We want them to get to eat those vegetables or whatever it is more on their plate, but we're actually showing that we're not trusting our child to know their body as well as they do. They know how much they're needing, and when we're pushing them to eat more, like so clean their plate or eat a few more bites or eat this and then you can have that, it's actually dysregulating their body so that they no longer are able to listen to their body. They're more listening to these external cues of, oh, I have to finish my plate even though my tummy's telling me that I'm full right now. And so as adults, like you said, of like, it's a habit that we now have as adults have to learn to break of, oh, I don't have to eat everything on my plate. And so if we're pressuring our kids to do all those things and not listening internally, as adults, it's much harder than they've learned those negative skills, and so now they're having to relearn that and go back. And so as adults, it's really important to know our job isn't to force them to eat or get to them to eat. It's really providing that opportunity of, oh, here's the food that I'm presenting or that I've made, and then it's the child's job to then decide whether or not they're going to eat and how much. And that kind of alleviate, like you said, I want dinner time to become this enjoyable time. And it takes that pressure off of the parent then to know, like, I've provided this opportunity and that's my job. And now I can let the child do their job and they can decide whether or not they're going to eat and how much. And I know that sounds like very simplified, and it does sound very simplified. And I know there's a lot more nuance that goes into it. But in the grand scheme of things, you don't have to stress or pressure them because their body already knows how much they need.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that term of my job is to provide the opportunity. It is not, and we do take on that role to determine what to eat and how much to eat. And it's just not a good place to be. But again, it comes out of, well, I don't want them getting hungry later. There might be like a stress, they're going to eat at they're going from here to their sport, and I don't want them to get hungry. But, again, and we're going to get into, how you work with some of those things too, but I just love that opportunity. The other statement that you had made when we were just going over notes is that we do as parents set up these goals, and I love that you say the goal shouldn't be to eat a vegetable.
Right.
The goal is to provide an opportunity and give them a variety of foods to choose from.
Right.
And I thought that was really powerful too. I mean, to the part I was really laughing because I work with so many families. And it really is and I had to admit too, with the families that I'd worked with, I was kind of going from the goal of like, you're going to eat a vegetable.
Right. And it's like we want them to eat vegetables, right? Even with my daughter, I'm like, but you didn't touch that. And in my head, I'm thinking that. I don't say it out loud. But knowing like there's lots of they're going to get the nutrients they need. And if it's not from a vegetable, like fruit also has a lot of great nutrients in it that overlap with vegetables. And knowing like, if the short-term goal is to get them to eat a vegetable at that meal, we may achieve that, right? We may get them to eat that. But then what's the long-term goal is we want them to enjoy vegetables, like to not look back and be like, or not like peas when they're, 30 years old because they were forced to eat them as a kid. That was the short-term goal. You got them to eat the peas, but now where are they at 30 years from now or whatever? We want the long-term goals for them to actually enjoy those vegetables.
And we're going to get into that too, which is going to be really fun. But I'll keep us on track here because
Yeah.
my mind is going to so many other questions I want to put in there. But this was an important one that I really wanted to hit on because I had asked you, and in what I've seen in my experience with families, if I'm going into the home and I'm actually working in the home, in all the time, it's like the mealtime is the first problem that we want to resolve. And I always say, it's like you're giving them full access to the kitchen and to grab snacks whenever they want. So they're not getting hungry. And you really have some great suggestions on how to limit snacks and just some ideas around that. So share those.
Yeah, that's a hard part of, again, you don't want your child to go hungry or like, or they're asking for snacks and you're like, oh, sure. But I think it's really important to have a schedule and knowing like there is a time where the kitchen is closed and it's okay for your child to, it's actually good for everybody to feel what it's like to feel hungry and also then to know what it feels like to be satisfied. And if they're grazing and having snacks consistently throughout the day, which is so easy to do, one, they won't be hungry, like you said, for dinner or the next meal potentially. And so then they're filling up on, usually snacks are more of the packaged items and they're not getting maybe the vegetables or the fruit because, or maybe as much protein because they're not hungry for dinner. And so it's important to know that having that guideline and that structure throughout the day is really important. As a parent, you're deciding when those meals and snacks are. It's not the child's job to decide that. And so again, you're providing the opportunity when you think is necessary and right, and you have that in your head ahead of time. It's not like, oh, the child comes to you and like, oh, I'm hungry, can I have a snack? You've already set, snack time isn't for another hour or a half hour, or dinner is coming in a half hour. We're going to wait until then. So you have that structure, and then over time your child then realizes, oh, they thrive on routine, right? And so that goes for dinner and meals as well. They'll start to know when those meals and snack times are.
I love that. And can you explain a little bit more about the kitchen is closed? I like that.
Yeah, and I've always gone as far as the kitchen is closed, obviously in terms of we're just not serving any food at this point. And I've always gone as far as like you can make a sign, like make it fun of like you turn it like it's open now or it's closed. And then that just as a cue for your child to know, is it time to have a snack? Is it time to have a meal? Or am I waiting a little bit of time? And you always want to make sure that the child knows there will be something coming, right? Like it's not like, oh, we're not having that or we're not eating right now, but knowing we're going to be eating at maybe a half, like however is that your child can comprehend time depending on how old your child is. And that might even be having a clock, and maybe on the noon at 12 you have a picture of a lunch, and at 3 you have a picture of a snack, and so they can see visually.
Oh, I like that.
When is that meal or snack coming, because they might not be able to tell time yet depending on the age, but they can actually see, okay, when the hand gets to this time or that picture, they know, oh, a meal is coming or a snack is coming. And it's just a way for them to have a little bit of knowledge of what's coming is really helpful for them.
Well, and I have found too, just going to the snack, that it almost has seemed like a part of our culture to have snacks.
Right.
And sometimes we take on that we're a bad parent if we're not providing a snack. And to be aware, like, kids don't always need a snack.
Yeah, and they don't need a lot of times when they ask for a snack, is it because they're bored? Is it because they're tired? Is it just because, most of the time it is because they're bored. It might be because actually they're hungry. But if it's boredom, we don't want to just constantly give snacks, or if it's because they're stressed or upset because they're at the doctor's office and we're like, oh, we'll give you some food because it'll calm you down.
Oh my goodness, yes.
But then that's emotional, like as an adult, then they're realizing, oh, if I'm stressed or if I'm bored, I can just go get food. And so they're learning to use food as comfort or emotional hunger rather than, oh, I'm actually feeling physically hungry. Food is going to solve that. And so we're not trying to, but we're promoting that emotional eating when we're constantly just giving snacks because of something's uncomfortable for our child, rather than letting them sit in that uncomfortable space and learning how to deal with that in a more healthy way.
So, this is a question because, of course, parents, in our world, food is so available, right? So it's easy to get, and as soon as somebody says they're hungry, I mean, we just have this mentality to satisfy it.
Sure.
And so is there like a guideline? I mean, this is something that I had used with the families. When they come back to me for a third time that they're hungry, then I'll usually give a little bit of a snack.
Sure.
Do you have any guidelines, like, because as you find this out with your kid, how do you figure out, or is there a good way to be like, okay, yes, they are really hungry, I can give a snack, or like, no,
Sure.
they're bored or whatever. Do you have any guidelines for parents on that?
Yeah, I think like waiting 3 times is totally valid. Also, just having like, your child of making sure they're eating like maybe every 2 to 3 hours, right? And that's depending on the age. I think that's also a key of if they're younger, they might need more snacks throughout the day. And so their stomachs are smaller, they can't go as long, and they can't eat as much at one time. So if you're consistently knowing, okay, we have breakfast, and then we have a snack, and then we have lunch, and then we might have another snack, and then we have dinner, that's giving them plenty of opportunity to have food consistently. And over time, if you just tell them, like, again, that, we're not having a snack right now, but snack is coming really soon, you could, so there's that technique. And knowing over time, they're going to know, like, I need to eat enough at this meal because I know that if I come back in an hour, I'm not going to get a snack. And I have to, maybe it's 2 hours before that snack. But if we're consistently just giving them that snack, that forms another bad habit where they're also thinking, if I don't eat lunch, it's okay because I'm just going to come back in another hour and then I can have what I really want. And that's the graham crackers or the goldfish. Or if I don't eat dinner, or if I eat a snack now, I'll eat a lot and then I don't have to worry about having like lunch or whatever. Or it just kind of like everything gets really gray and blends together of what meals or what and what snacks. And so that's also something to keep in mind of if they know that something's coming, if they ask, they might not eat as much for dinner or for lunch or whatever. But staying consistent of, they then can rely on like, okay, I know a meal is coming or I know a snack is coming, but I do have to eat enough in order to make it to that meal or snack. That said, if it's dinner time, I know it can get really crazy of like they're ravenous and you're trying to get dinner going and it's just not going well. So you can always offer part of what you're going to be offering for dinner early. Like, so maybe they can munch on some veggies or some fruit while they're waiting for the meal to be ready. So that's also something that you can do. They're eating it just a little bit before dinner rather than at the meal itself.
Well, if anything that we can share with parents, letting your kids feel hungry is not bad parenting.
Yeah.
It's actually really good parenting. And I think that's the switch that needs to happen. Again, I just think back to just with, all the families that I've worked with and even my own son, there's almost this tension of, what if I leave the house without packing my kid a snack? And it's this, I don't know, our society has built this thing of like, we have to have snacks.
Right.
And I see it's really can cause big part of why those dinner times and lunch times can be so emotionally messy because they're not actually hungry.
Right, yeah. And it goes back to trusting our child then. Like, it's so, we, as a parent, you just hate to hear your child say, I'm hungry. And you're like, I can fix that. I can do that.
Yes.
But also just trust your child to know like they can regulate their bodies and they know how much they need. And if they know when snack time is, they know how much they're going to need to eat in order to make it to that next snack. And I know it's oversimplified and there's lots of, like, each family is different and each child is different. And but it's just something like, I think, reassurance of, it is very cultural to feel like I have to have snacks with me. I have to have those pouches with me of, and I have to have all the little goldfish or anything around with me. But it doesn't mean that we have to do that. And a lot of cultures don't. They don't have snacks regularly. And so we don't have to feed into that. Knowing that it's going to ultimately be helping our child more by not doing that.
And I think that's the mind shift, you know, is to remember that this is going to be helpful to our child, to let them go hungry and experience that, and then experience the satisfaction of what they eat. And I'll just say from my own adulthood, I mean, it's taken me a long time to break that, you know, clean plate. Like, and I'll still like look and I'm like, it's this emotional turmoil within me to leave food on my plate, but I know that I'm, you know, not hungry. And then for me to not overpack food, you know, because it's like, oh, I got to have snacks and stuff. And I'm going, well, maybe I can just try not to and see what happens. And I'm still here. I've lived to see another day. Let's get into why are kids picky eaters? What are some of the reasons around kids will become picky?
Yeah, there's a lot, like so many reasons, right? And that we don't know exactly for each child. I will say, this picky eating that I'm talking about is very much just the general picky eating. I think if a parent is actually concerned that my kid isn't eating anything, that's okay to reach out to your pediatrician or reach out, because there may be something going on, right? But this is for general, like they just don't, it's kind of hit or miss, right? They kind of eat, they sometimes don't. So this is like that overarching general picky eating, and it's very common. It's going to happen to probably almost every kid is going to have a phase where they're a little picky. And a lot of that is, I mean, a whole host of reasons, but one, they're not growing as much. So you might have felt like, wow, before, like when they were 1 or just turning 1, they were like, my daughter included, eating everything. And then their growth starts to slow down, and so they don't need as much food. And so you're used to seeing, wow, they're eating great, and now they're not. What happened? Also, for kids, it's a lot of independence. So it's rarely about food, to be honest. Like there is food related, but it's a lot of other things going on with them. They don't have a lot of control of everything going on in their world. And so food is one thing of like, oh, I can say yes or I can say no. And something happens and I have that a little bit of autonomy. And so just a little side note, one thing that you can help with that is giving them a little bit of autonomy of like, do you want waffles for breakfast or eggs for breakfast? Either one is okay by you, but it helps them feel like, oh, I had a say in what I was going to eat. And so it's that lack of autonomy that sometimes they're just trying to like, oh, I'm gonna say no to this because I can. And then also beige and bland foods are safe. Like biologically, they know this is something that is safe, whereas a lot of the colorful foods or whatever may be unsafe historically.
Do you know, that was, when I was reading through this, I was like, I never thought about that. You know, just that mental piece of these are just more comforting, and I love that, safe.
Yeah, and if you think of graham crackers or whatever, they always taste the same. Whereas a blueberry, sometimes it's tart, sometimes it's really sweet, sometimes it's mushy, sometimes, like you never know, right? And so the inconsistency might throw a child off of like, oh, I didn't like it last time, maybe I won't like it this time. And then also thinking carbohydrates, that's a really fast like energy source, and it's kids are moving around and doing all things. I know they said that their growth slows down, but they still are growing. And so carbohydrates, if you feel like, oh, all my kid eats is crackers and all these things, it's because their body actually does need a lot of carbohydrates because it's fast energy that they can then use and put to use right away.
I love this information. I think it will help parents so much. One of the other points that you made too is we are a 3 meal a day society. But you had mentioned that kiddos really are usually 2 good meals a day.
So sometimes they've already met their calorie needs for the day by having, like, they might have a really great breakfast and they might eat really well at lunch and they have some snacks in there. And by dinner, they're just tired for one, and also they might have met the amount that they need in a day. And for us, it's hard to see like, what? You're not eating and it's so close to bedtime? Are you gonna make it through bedtime then? And but yeah, a lot of times, and as intuitive eaters, right, they're not just eating because there's food on the table. They're eating based on, do I actually need this right now, or am I feeling okay? And so trusting that, I think, goes back to trusting the child of, I've provided the opportunity, and now they get to decide whether or not they're going to eat it and if they need it. And also, a lot of times we go day by day, but it could be like, kids go by a week, right? One day they eat awesome. They eat so much, you're like, whoa, what's going on? And then the next day it's like nothing. and their bodies are regulating how much they need, but it's not, for us, it's more a day-to-day, where for them it might be larger spans of time of fluctuations.
That's good information as well.
Yeah. And more just as comforting for the parent, right? To like think back of, oh yeah, it's okay because their bodies are, it may not look the same day to day. And so it's more of a comfort for the parent as well.
Yes, absolutely. One other strategy that I just wanted to get your thoughts on. So you have this where you've prepared, dinner and they're not hungry. But there is a really real possibility that maybe later on the evening before bed they do. What about the strategy of like, that's okay, it's in the fridge, and if you decide you want to eat it later, is that a good, healthy strategy for parents to do so you don't feel like you're cooking all the time?
Right, I know, right. If you do feel like they're like foods that they do enjoy, and I think the key is to have like, you've already set in your head that you offer a bedtime snack. If you don't typically offer a bedtime snack, it may be like, oh, like that's okay if you don't want to eat this. The next time that we're going to be eating is at breakfast tomorrow. And so it's kind of, I'd say almost helpful to just let them know like, this is the next time you're going to be eating. It's either a bedtime snack, and you're more than welcome to pull out the dinner that they weren't hungry for. Or if you don't often offer a bedtime snack, then saying, well, the next time that we're going to be eating is at breakfast. So that you have that schedule that's set. Of course, this is just like all schedules are just a schedule, right?
Yeah.
And so
finding that schedule that works with your family.
Yep, exactly. So some offer bedtime snacks, sometimes you don't. That family doesn't need one. And you can use your best judgment as a parent, right? Of like, things are going crazy. They weren't hungry at 5, but I know they're going to be hungry at 6 or whatever. You can be flexible too. It's not like you have to be so rigid. But in general, kind of keeping with that routine is really helpful.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Any just real quick last minute tips that you can give parents about the picky eater? And like a big one, like I'm making 3 different meals to satisfy everybody.
I feel like try really hard to stay away from that short order cook, because one, for the parent, that's exhausting and tiring, and you're just going to burn out on that. And also you don't need to, right? So again, you provide the opportunity. Always offer a safe food. So say you're having lasagna and your kid hates lasagna for whatever reason, but there's other people that like it in the family and you like it. Always offer, maybe there's raspberries that your child really loves, or you could always have bread and butter as a safe food for your child. So they're not leaving the table feeling like, you don't ever have to worry, oh wow, they didn't eat anything. Did they like what was served and they didn't like it? But always know like, oh, they didn't eat anything, but I know they really do like raspberries, or they really like bread and butter or whatever. If they were hungry, they would actually eat that. So always make sure that there is something that they will eat, but it's not catered just to them. It's something that the whole family is eating. And one other quick tip is really trying to stay away from just focusing on the food. So I guess I always try to keep it into like perspective of what would I want. So if somebody's asking me, oh, what do you like? Are you going to eat that broccoli? Are you going to eat this? Or if you eat just a couple more bites of that for me, will you? And I'd be like, wait, let me just eat my food.
Yeah.
That's something that I think we focus on the food a lot, but just try to, like you said, dinner time should be a time to connect with the family. And so have conversation, not focused on just eating. Because then the more we focus on that, probably the more resistance you're going to get. And just focus on, how was your day? Or like all these conversation starters. And then eventually, I promise you, the child may actually start eating if we don't are zero focused on are you eating something?
Absolutely.
So that goes a long way too.
And the biggest takeaway, it's okay for your kid to feel hungry.
Yeah.
And let them be hungry. It's okay. It's not bad parenting.
Yes.
I appreciate everything that you shared today. Share your website with us.
Yeah, so it's KaraHoerrNutrition.com. And I think it's it's always kind of confusing to actually know how to spell all that, but
they can see it. It's on the screen, so that will help them figure out the spelling of it.
Perfect.
And again, thank you. I can't wait for parents to start tuning into this. It'll be a big help.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Parenting Game.
We're all familiar with the 3 whats: what it is, what it can do for me, and what does it cost. Tyler Rickenaugh Country Financial can help you find the answers with insurance coverage to help protect what's most important to you, all at a price you can afford. So while you're juggling work and kids while trying to keep an eye on your financial future, Tyler Rickenaugh Country Financial will make sure they are the first ones there when you need them most.
The kids are back to school, and your schedule is busier than ever. From daycare pickup, doctor's appointments, sports, and college tuition, a parent's signature is a powerful thing. Have you ever stopped to think, what would happen if you weren't able to provide one? With thoughtful estate planning, you can make sure that your child's health and education needs are met in the event of your absence due to a temporary incapacity or even death. The estate planning team at Hoerr Burish is here to help.
Thank you for watching The Parenting Game. All episodes of The Parenting Game are available on demand at sunprairiemediacenter.com.